There are things said between people in private that stay private. And then there are things said between people in public, in front of a studio audience and a live microphone, and a host who has spent 30 years watching human beings in compressed, high-pressure moments, that become something entirely different the second they leave the mouth. This is a story about one of those things, about a sentence said on a game show stage that was aimed at one person and heard by everyone, about what the person it was aimed at decided to do with it, and about what happens when the person everyone in the room had just been told could not do something turns around and does it better than anyone in that building had seen it done all season. This is a story about a woman named Vivian. It is a story about what she already knew about herself and what the rest of the room was about to find out. And it is, depending on how you are feeling when you get to the end of it, either a story about winning a game show or a story about something that feels a great deal larger than that. Hit that like button and subscribe right now before we go any further, because we come back every single week with stories that deserve the attention they rarely get, and this one has been waiting for you. Now let us talk about Vivian Hayes and the afternoon she proved something in front of everybody. Vivian Hayes was 44 years old when she appeared on Family Feud in the spring of 2024, and she had, by the time she arrived at that studio, been in the process of becoming someone for a very long time. This is not unusual. Most people in their mid-40s are in the process of becoming someone. What made Vivian's situation specific was that the process had been running on a long delay, not because of any shortage in her, but because of the specific, accumulated weight of being in an environment for a significant number of years that had made it very difficult to hear her own voice clearly. She had grown up in Montgomery, Alabama, the second of 4 children in a family that was warm and loud and full of opinions, and she had been, by every account of the people who knew her then, the sharpest of the 4. The one who read everything, the one who remembered things, the one who found the solution to things that the others had already given up on. Her 3rd-grade teacher had told her mother that Vivian was exceptional. Her mother had told Vivian, and Vivian had believed it, in the uncomplicated way that children believe things when they hear them from people they trust. She had married at 26. His name was Raymond, and he was handsome in a way that photographed well and charming in a way that worked in short intervals and confident in a way that she had, in those early years, confused with competence. Raymond had opinions about most things. He had opinions about how a kitchen should be organized, and about how a car should be maintained, and about whether the route she chose to get somewhere was the most efficient route, and about how she expressed her opinions in social situations, and about whether her opinions, in general, were the right ones to have. He was not, in the way that the word is sometimes used, abusive. He was something harder to name, and in some ways harder to address, someone who had spent 18 years chipping away at a person with the small, steady, deniable instruments of dismissal and condescension, and the particular humor that is really not humor at all but keeps being delivered in the key of humor, so that if you object to it you are the one being too sensitive. He did not raise his voice. He raised his eyebrow. He said things like, "Well, that's one way to look at it." He said things like, "You're thinking about it the wrong way, babe." He said things that over 18 years had added up to a single consistent message, which was that Vivian's instincts were not to be trusted, and her thinking was not to be relied on, and the wisest thing she could do in most situations was to let Raymond handle it. Vivian had not entirely believed this. But she had heard it often enough and consistently enough that she had stopped entirely disbelieving it, which is a different thing from believing it, but which produces many of the same practical outcomes. She had stopped arguing as much. She had started checking herself before speaking. She had developed the habit of looking at Raymond before offering an opinion in social situations, a micro-hesitation that was so practiced by now it had become invisible to her, though several people who knew her well had noticed it, and named it to each other in the way that the people who love someone notice the things being done to that person before the person themselves can fully see it. The Family Feud team was built around Vivian's sister Angela, who was 41 and who had been the one to fill out the application and engineer the whole enterprise for reasons that were partly about having fun and partly about something she did not say out loud, but that Vivian's other sister Cherelle, 39, understood completely and had signed on for the same reason. Raymond was on the team. This had been Vivian's condition for participating, that Raymond would come. She had not explained why beyond saying she wanted her family there. Her sisters had not pushed. The 5th team member was their cousin Marcus, 35, who had no awareness of any of the subtext and who had agreed to be on Family Feud because Family Feud was on television and he had been given the opportunity to be on television, and this was the entirety of his reasoning, which was both pure and sufficient. In the weeks before the taping, the family had practiced. Vivian had been good at it. Better than good, actually. She had the specific recall and lateral thinking that made someone strong at Family Feud, and the practice sessions had reminded her of something she had not thought about in a while, which was that she was fast, that she had good instincts, that when she stopped the micro-hesitation and just said the thing that came immediately to mind, it was usually right. Angela had noticed this. Cherelle had noticed this. Raymond had noticed this too, though what he had noticed and what the sisters had noticed were pointed in opposite directions. At one point during a practice session when Vivian had answered 3 in a row correctly without pausing, Raymond had made a comment about beginner's luck. Vivian had looked at him and said nothing. Angela had looked at Cherelle. The practice session had continued. On the day of the taping, both families arrived at the studio and went through the standard pregame process. The preparation, the introductions, the warm-up with the production team. Steve Harvey did his pregame segment with the Hayes family and immediately liked them, the way he immediately likes families who have real energy and real warmth and are genuinely enjoying being together rather than performing the enjoyment. He spent time on each person, asking questions, drawing out the moments that would make the audience feel connected. He asked Vivian what she did for work. She said she was a dental office manager. He asked what she was going to do with the prize money if they won. She said she was going to take her sisters to New Orleans because they had been planning the trip for 3 years, and something always came up. Angela and Cherelle responded to this with the specific enthusiasm of people who did not know this answer was coming and were very glad it had. Raymond, standing beside Vivian, said something under his breath that Steve Harvey did not catch. The first round went well. Both families were competitive. The opposing family, the Torres family from Houston, Texas, were fast and funny and had clearly prepared, and the first 2 rounds were close enough to keep the energy in the studio elevated. The Hayes family was good. Vivian was good. She gave answers that hit, and she gave them without the micro-hesitation, because something about the specific energy of a live studio, the lights, the audience, the immediacy of it, was bypassing the 18-year edit and landing her in the faster, cleaner version of herself. Angela kept catching her eye between turns and giving her the small, private nod of a sister watching something she has always known finally being visible to people outside the family. The moment happened in the 3rd round. The Hayes family had just gotten a strong answer, and the board was showing 3 successful reveals in a row. The energy was up. The audience was engaged. And Raymond, in the particular way of a man who is least comfortable when the people around him are most confident, leaned toward Vivian during the brief exchange between questions and said something that he almost certainly did not intend to carry the way it carried. He said, and multiple ambient microphones confirmed exactly what he said, and the production team made the decision to include it in the broadcast because it was germane to what followed. He said, "Don't buzz in on this one. You'll get it wrong. You're not quick enough for this category." He said it at the volume of someone giving private coaching. The volume was wrong. Steve Harvey was close enough to the podium to hear it clearly. 3 audience members in the front row heard it clearly. Cherelle, standing 1 person away, heard every word. Vivian heard it. She heard it the way she had heard the 18-year version of it, with the part of her brain that had been trained, over time, to receive this signal and produce a hesitation. She felt the hesitation start. She felt the familiar pull of it, the trained reflex of a woman who had spent a long time in proximity to a voice that said her instincts were not reliable. And then something happened that she later described, in the interview she gave 2 months after the episode aired, as the moment she had not planned and could not fully explain except to say that it felt like something getting tired. The hesitation started, and then it did not complete. The familiar override that had been layering itself into her nervous system for 18 years went to run its program and found, in that specific moment under those specific lights with her sisters standing beside her and Steve Harvey looking at her, that the program was not going to execute today. She looked at Raymond. She did not say anything. She turned back to face the board. Steve Harvey had already moved. He had positioned himself in the way he positions himself when he is going to say something that is not exactly the thing on the card in front of him. He looked at Raymond for a moment, not with hostility, with the particular focused attention of someone taking a clear-eyed inventory of a situation. Then he looked at Vivian. He did something simple that turned out to be significant. He said her name, not to introduce a question, not as part of the game mechanics, but simply to say it. Vivian, the name of the person in the room who had just had something done to them that the room had witnessed and that Steve Harvey was not prepared to let stand without comment. "Vivian," he said. I want to ask you something. Forget what was just said to you for a second. When you go home and you sit with your family and somebody asks a trivia question or something comes up, are you the one who knows the answer? Be honest." Vivian looked at him. Something moved across her face, not the performing of emotion, something more private than that, the expression of a person being asked a question that is both simple and, in the context of their life, not simple at all. She said quietly, "Yeah, I usually am." "I know," Steve said. He said it with the calm certainty of someone who has already assessed the situation and made up his mind about it. "I could see that the first minute you walked out here." He looked at the audience. "You saw it too, right?" The audience responded with the warmth of people who had been watching Vivian and had, in fact, seen it. Then Steve looked at Raymond with the tone of a man who has decided to say something directly and has decided there is no version of this that benefits from softening. "I don't know exactly what's going on in your household, and it's none of my business, but I'll tell you what I see when I look at your wife. I see somebody who came out here today and has been sharp on every single answer. I see somebody with good instincts and a quick mind." He paused. "And I see somebody who just now you told couldn't answer a question right, so I want you to pay attention to what happens next, because I think you might be about to learn something." Raymond said nothing. He had the expression of a man who had not anticipated the direction this afternoon was going to go, and who was processing the experience of having his private dynamic named publicly in a way that made it visible in a different light. His expression was not belligerent. It was not defiant. It was the expression of someone who is sitting with something uncomfortable and does not yet know what they are going to do with it, which is at least the beginning of the right response. Vivian was given the buzzer for the next question. She hit it before Steve Harvey had finished the sentence. The answer she gave was the #1 response on the survey, 41 points. The audience went up. Angela grabbed Cheryl's arm. Steve Harvey pointed at Vivian without saying anything, the specific point of a man making an argument that he does not need to state out loud because the evidence is right there on the board. The round that followed was, by the account of the production team, one of the most enjoyable they had experienced at a taping in months. Vivian was released in a way that she herself later struggled to describe precisely. Something about Steve's public naming of what he saw in her, the specificity of it, the matter-of-fact delivery, the way he had said I could see that the first minute you walked out here had done something to the micro-hesitation. Not eliminated it permanently, she would say later, because 18 years does not get undone in an afternoon, but suspended it, made it irrelevant for the duration of what she was about to do. She answered questions with the speed of someone who has stopped second-guessing herself. She gave answers that hit. She gave one answer in the 4th round that was so fast and so correct that even the Tor's family, who were competing against her, responded with visible appreciation. Marcus, who had no awareness of any of the subtext and was simply having the time of his life, kept celebrating every one of her answers with the enthusiasm of someone who does not know about the layers and therefore responds only to the surface layer, which was that his cousin was absolutely destroying this game show. The Hayes family won the main game. They went to fast money. Cheryl went first and scored 118 points. Vivian went second. She walked to the fast money podium with the ease of someone who is where they belong. Not swaggering, she was not a swaggerer, with the specific grounded ease of someone who has located themselves accurately in a situation and is no longer spending any energy on the question of whether they belong there. Steve Harvey looked at her and said simply, "Show them." She showed them. 5 questions, 20 seconds. The clock ran. Vivian answered all 5 before the last 5 seconds had elapsed. She answered them with the speed and accuracy of the version of herself that had always been there, underneath the 18 years, waiting for an afternoon when the edit was not running. 3 #1 answers, 1 #2, 1 #3. The Hayes family total was 286 points. They had won $20,000. The audience was on its feet before the number finished appearing on the screen. Angela did not scream. She made a sound that was not quite a scream and not quite a sob, and was both of those things simultaneously. Cherryl held Vivian's face in both hands for 1 second and looked at her the way sisters look at each other when something that has been true for a long time has finally been made visible to everyone in the room. Marcus lifted both arms like his team had scored a touchdown, which was exactly the right energy. Raymond stood beside them with an expression that was unreadable in the broad sense, but that contained, for those paying attention, the specific quality of a man who has just had an extended conversation with himself about several things and is not yet done having it. Steve Harvey came to Vivian with the check and held it between them and said, "There she is." That was all, 3 words. Vivian looked at the check and then at Steve and nodded once, with the expression of a woman receiving confirmation of something she had always known and is grateful to have confirmed but is also not surprised by, because she already knew. She had already known. The episode aired 4 weeks later. The clip of Raymond's comment, the ambient audio was clear enough that the edit included it with a brief subtitle, and Steve's immediate response traveled in the way that things travel when they touch something real and widespread and not often named out loud. Women who had been in relationships with people who communicated the same message in the same way, in the key of humor, with deniability over years, shared it with a specific urgency that the clip's comment sections captured in detail. The comments were not angry, or not only angry. They were the comments of people who recognized something, who had their own version of the micro-hesitation, who had their own version of, well, that's one way to look at it, said in the tone of a person who has already decided it is not, who had spent years in the presence of someone who had, piece by small piece, made them uncertain of their own instincts. Seeing it named, clearly, by someone with a platform, in language that made the mechanism of it visible rather than treating it as a private matter between two people, had done something for them. The comments said so, repeatedly and specifically and at length. Mental health professionals and relationship therapists began sharing the clip as an illustration of something that has a name in their field. A pattern of behavior in intimate relationships where one person's judgment and competence is systematically undermined by the other in ways that are rarely dramatic enough to name as abuse, but that accumulate into significant damage over time. Several wrote publicly about the clip, not about the game show mechanics of it, but about what the micro-hesitation represented. The way a person can be trained over years to doubt reflexes that are actually good, to add a pause before instincts that are actually reliable, to look to someone else for confirmation of what they already know. The visibility of it, they said, was the useful thing. The fact that it had been demonstrated in real time, with the mechanism exposed rather than just the outcome, gave people a language for something they had been experiencing without a language for. Angela, after the episode aired, said in a brief interview that the thing she had wanted most when she filled out that Family Feud application was exactly what happened. She said she had known, for years, what Vivian was capable of, and she had wanted Vivian to have a room that confirmed it. A room that was not the room at home, where the confirmation was withheld. A studio full of strangers and a host who had assessed Vivian in 60 seconds and called it correctly in front of everybody before the game had even demonstrated it. She said Steve Harvey had done in one sentence, "I could see that the first minute you walked out here," something that she and Cherelle had been trying to do for years, and that had not landed with the same weight, because the voice of a sister, however loving, does not carry the same confirmation as the voice of someone with no stake in the outcome who is simply stating what they observe. She said that was not a criticism of her relationship with her sister. She said it was just true. Vivian gave one interview 2 months after the episode aired to a magazine focused on women's health and relationships. She did not speak about Raymond by name. She did not confirm or deny anything about the state of their marriage in the period following the episode. What she said was this, that the afternoon had not changed anything she knew about herself, because she had always known it. What it had changed was how loud the thing she knew had become relative to the other things competing for her attention in the place where she made decisions about herself. She said that, for a long time, the loudest voice in her head when she was about to do something had been a voice that was not her own, not because she had chosen it, but because the conditions of her life had given it a great deal of practice, and volume comes with practice. She said that the afternoon at Family Feud had been, among other things, practice for her own voice. She said she was doing more of that practice now. She said she was getting louder. She took her sisters to New Orleans. They went in July, 3 months after the episode aired. She used the prize money the way she had said she would on the trip she had been planning for 3 years while something always came up. They stayed for 4 days. Cherelle later posted a single photograph from the trip without caption that showed the 3 of them on a balcony at dusk, laughing at something, mid-laugh, no posing, no arrangement, nothing but the spontaneous physical expression of 3 sisters in a moment of genuine, unmanaged joy. Vivian is in the middle. Her chin is up. Her shoulders are back. She is laughing with everything she has. Angela and Cherelle are on either side of her, and you can tell from the way they are angled toward her that the laugh started with Vivian. That she was the one who said the thing. That she was the funny one in that moment, the one who found it, the one who gave it to the room. She usually is. She always was. What this story is about, at the deepest level, under the game show and the buzzer and the $20,000 and the clip that circulated across the internet for weeks, is something that most people will not name directly, but that most people have lived some version of. It is about the accumulation of small things. The way a raised eyebrow repeated often enough becomes a mirror you start to believe. The way a comment delivered in the key of humor, delivered consistently enough, becomes the background music of your self-concept without your choosing it. The way that the internal voice that is most accessible, the one that runs first, the one you hear before you have a chance to deliberate, can become someone else's voice through proximity and repetition, and the way that reclaiming your own voice requires, sometimes, a room. A specific kind of room. A room where someone who has never met you and has no stake in the answer looks at you for 60 seconds and says, "I see what you are. I saw it the first minute you walked in. And now everyone else in this building is going to see it too." Vivian Hayes walked into that studio already knowing what she was. She walked out having shown it. $20,000, a trip to New Orleans, and the permanent, enrolled memory of what it felt like to stop the hesitation and just answer the question and be right. The money will get spent. The trip will become a story they tell, but the memory of the hesitation stopping, that is hers to keep. She is keeping it. She is practicing with it. She is getting louder. If this story touched something in you, if some part of Vivian's experience is familiar in a way you have not had words for, or if it made you think of someone in your life who has been made uncertain of instincts that are actually excellent, share this with them today. Not tomorrow. Today. Leave a comment and tell us what part of Vivian's story stayed with you, because the comments on stories like this one matter in ways that go beyond the usual, and this community shows up for them. And if you are not already here with us, subscribe right now, because every single week we come back with stories exactly like this one. Stories about people in the middle of becoming themselves. Stories about the rooms that confirm what was always true. And stories about the moment the hesitation stops and the answer comes and the board reveals it and it is right. It was always right. It was right before anyone else knew it, and the person who gave it has known it the whole time. We will see you in the next one.